So we have e4, e5. When you see those bishops out there, usually means it's the Italian, and c3 was one of the last moves. So now we're going to see how he handles it. All right, d4 played. I mean, when a move like c3 is there, this is pretty much the main idea. Wants to take the center of the board, and after something like takes, my bishop's under attack. Bishop b4 is probably going to be my intention, so I'm going to go with that. Okay, so we got knight c3, and one of the key things about an opening like this is pretty much the move d5. So white has a lot of ways to play this position. It can be with bishop d2, knight d2, knight c3. Knight c3 is actually going into a pretty long theoretical line after knight takes e4, d5. Pretty long theoretical line. Are we going to venture into that territory? I'm not so sure. I'm thinking of a couple things here. First of all, takes and knight takes e4. Second of all, d5, although that usually works a lot better against these two moves. And knight takes e4 straight away. So we're going to look at taking this pawn for sure. I think it's pretty instructive to see how or whether or not we can grab this guy. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take first on c3 and then on e4, and we'll see how he handles it. So we got a couple moves here. Number one, d5 looks pretty normal. Attacking a piece, defending a piece. Also castling. If he goes to take that, I have rook e8. So I feel like I have a couple good options here. I'm going to choose the more tactical option, which is to castle. Nice. My opponent saw exactly what I was calculating there, which is always good. And your opponent and yourself are on the same wavelength. It's always fantastic. Doesn't mean you have to be on the correct page in the book. You just have to be on the same page as your opponent. Rook e8. You and I both saw the same thing there. I'm going to play d5. It's a very important move that I mentioned last time. I'm going to go ahead with it. Okay, open file. Also supports the knight, which is now double attacked, and hits the queen with an x-ray. Got to do this. I think I have a couple decent options here. Bishop to g4 and bishop to f5. I'm going to choose to pick the slightly more aggressive one and go to g4. Knight d2. So I think at this point, knight takes d2, bishop takes on h7. Certainly idea. I'm probably just going to drop my knight back and avoid some trades. Make sure we don't blunder this. Okay. I was going to actually say drop back, but I think I can force a exchange here. Okay. We're going to go for trades here. We definitely do want to trade pieces. Let's throw in an h6. Good habits. Good habits. This check doesn't seem to get me anywhere. Hey, how about more trades? We know we like those. We're up a pawn. Nice move. I'm going to choose to defend this before I lose it. Let's kick that queen out a little bit. See if we can bring this in here. Certainly expect the rook to get active for my opponent here. And I'm going to do my best to try to bother him here with the queen. So the knight reaches a square which I've been going for. Nice little outpost there. Can't be attacked. And from here, I think I'm going to try to contest the e-file if he lets me. He doesn't let me. Good move. Good move. I'm going to attack this guy. Oh, okay. Definitely going to take that. And this knight covering the checking square is, I mean, it's not necessary, but it is nice. It is nice. Do have a pass pawn here. Let's go for more trades. Let's sort of solidify this. Neil knows a thing or two about solidifying. He doesn't go king there. Wow. I thought for sure he was going to blunder this fork. That's amazing. Oh, he blundered that one. Well, he impressed me by not playing king g2 there. I thought for sure he was blundering this this fork. And now I've actually set Neil up. I've actually set Neil up for something just horrible, horrible pitfall. So now when I play with the white pieces, I'm going to play the exact same way as Neil did. And we'll see if he plays the exact same way as I did. Switch up the position. Okay, so he goes for d6. Choose a different path than knight f6. No matter what black does, I think it's in white's best interest to play d4. As black, you definitely want to get the pieces out and try to play d5 as quick as possible. As white, there's no question you want to play d4 as quick as possible. So, bishop back to b6, and we actually see a type of position that you don't normally see this early, which is one where I think if I take here, black already has a couple questions to answer, like, for example, here, if I trade queens, I'm worried that he's going to actually be losing a pawn here. So I'm going to go pawn takes and see what he's got. As white in these positions, it's not always the case that black can like leave his pawn on e5 and just let you take and be okay. So I'm going to continue down this rabbit hole. So if the king takes, we're going to take this pawn. If the knight takes, then we're going to take this pawn. And winning a center pawn this early in the game, pretty important. Okay, bishop e6 makes some sense. Of course, he's got to defend this pawn. But, you know, on the flip side, if you look at it from my perspective, I'm going to be very happy with trades in general. So I'm not going to take too much time probably snapping this this bishop off the board. You can see already, like when white plays c3 d4, black doesn't often have the option to just sit there and guard the e5 pawn. Often you do have to take, which is what I did when we played with the other, well, with the colors reversed. So I'm going to take here now that I'm up a pawn and continue trading. Okay, I'm probably going to take this knight and just remove it from the exact middle of the board and look to do more trades. Move makes a lot of sense. He is keeping the bishop on the board. Keeping that bishop on the board. Bishop e3 is tempting for more trades, but I'm not sure if that is the best for me right now. I'm probably going to keep bothering his bishop by going knight here with the idea of knight b3. Okay, this pawn under, well, let's say threatened by the knight, so something my knight always needs to watch out for. This move, there's knight takes e4, and f3, I'm definitely looking at knight f4 as a move, and I'm noticing, I think that I can counter it with knight b3 tactically, so I'm probably going to go for it. Okay, let's continue with my plan. He doesn't fall into this fork, which is really good. Really good for him. Let's develop the rest of our pieces. Okay, and even though this move falls a little short of that, I am going to play the move a4 just to stop this in the future. Okay, and now I'm probably going to leave my king in the center because we're already pretty much in an endgame. We got one extra pawn, and you guys know the prescription here. It's pretty much just trade everything. Just want to keep it nice and simple when you're up a pawn. Trade pieces is basically the only plan you need to know. Let's start to advance my extra pawns. And I'm very curious how he takes after this. He takes with the bishop. I think that's the right idea by him to not give up or let me play bishop takes knight, but I was concerned about this position. And we were able to win a piece there because, well, the pawn was going to get really scary. What is the procedure when you're up a knight? Well, it won't surprise you, but as long as you attack some of these pawns, wherever you can attack a pawn with your extra piece, it's just going to be eventually too hard for him to defend. So we're going to try it. Now this guy's stuck here and will be a target for the rest of the game. And now I'm basically going to leave his king stuck to that pawn and just do everything over here. Yeah. I mean, that one extra piece, even though I didn't really use it, the fact that it was right there, attacking g5 was just pretty painful. Hello.
Hello, Amon.
How
It
was
appears I have
that for
been
you?
bested.
You have, although I wasn't without my opportunities given for you to best me.
Oh, okay.
So there were definitely some moments there. The games were, I guess, very grindy. Like a very small advantage was given up
Yeah.
and then taken advantage of. So it definitely wasn't a blowout, and like these games definitely went pretty long. But they also could have that sense from your perspective that it felt maybe a little bit hopeless. But really, it was just one pawn in
Dude,
each
yeah,
game
I
was the
just went down a
difference.
pawn so fast both games.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought I'm gonna share my screen here just so it's a little bit easier for you to keep up.
Cool.
So this one I'll just flip it my side for a sec. But so I went knight f6, which is I would certainly classify knight f6 as the main move.
Yeah.
Against
I
like White's last move was probably c3. Let's say if we were to guess how this
Right.
opening started.
Yeah, I actually didn't realize it was Black's turn to move. So that's why I like pre-move d4.
I saw the d4 pre-move and I was like, okay, that's it. You know, a guy who knows what he wants.
Yeah.
A guy who knows what he wants. The nice thing about d4 as a pre-move is it's probably completely safe.
Yeah. It's I knew it was a pretty normal looking move, so
Yep.
but I was like, why isn't this going? And just kind of sent it. It's okay.
So that's worked out. Move number one. We already had some potential hiccups, but d4 is definitely the best move. I think if you play knight f6 the way that I did, you sort of are obliged to continue
Yep.
this way, whereas your way was about maintaining the pawn. But if I don't make any move that looks to maintain it, I certainly can't do anything after d4 because it's just overloaded. So there's many moves, probably 3 main moves that white
Right.
could or
Yeah,
should
I
choose
know
from.
like I was really tempted to bishop d2.
Mm-hmm.
Just because then like if you take, then I can just recap and I'm still protecting the e pawn with my knight.
Yes.
But for some reason I thought I like couldn't remember like my theory, because I think in like some similar position like this, there's like I think there's a trap with like knight f3. But that may be like some Evans Gambit type stuff. I don't remember.
When you say knight f3, do you mean knight
Sorry,
f3?
c3, c3. Sorry.
Yeah. No, what you play with knight c3 is absolutely a move and absolutely a line. It's just a little different and let's say a little more aggressive. So like this would be a very safe way to play because you know you're not dropping anything, like everything's protected. Knight c3, which is what you did, is a pretty fun way to play, or it certainly can be. You'll definitely KO a lot of people who try to grab this pawn.
Yeah.
Because it definitely comes with its risks. So there's knight takes and there's bishop takes on c3. So there's a few different moves, but usually there's some combination of like white wants to give up e4 and potentially even give up c3 just to play the move d5.
Yeah.
And I kind of view this position as a race to play d5. Like if white gets to play it first, black's knight has to go somewhere pretty bad.
Oh, gotcha.
And if black gets to play it first, then he sort of gets the space he needs for his pieces, and the knight can take back, stuff like that.
Yep.
So what I did was I decided to take first with the bishop. Knight takes here would have resulted maybe in the exact same thing, but I decided to take bishop first, and then knight takes. So I wasn't sure how you would play this one. I thought maybe you would go for castling.
Yeah, I was really conflicted about whether like queen e2 or queen b3, and then I forgot that like castling works here too. I mean, of course, I went with queen e2, but I actually think I like queen b3 better.
Right. Stops d5 for one.
Yeah, but
The
I don't know.
only thing about queen b3 that you might regret after I castle is that you just immediately have to deal with a threat, which sucks, of knight a5.
Oh yeah, knight, yeah. Okay.
So it's like you play it, you make a threat, but I get to castle, which is
Oh.
what I want to do anyway, and then you have to deal with my knight a5.
Nice one-ply move there.
Very one-ply. However,
Yes.
I came up with a nice one-plier myself. So I think queen e2 is probably not the best, and maybe something like
Yeah.
castling would be the most natural, especially for you. Just
Right.
get the king to safety, and then you know that if black keeps munching these pawns, eventually it's just gonna be too greedy. Like,
Right.
this isn't something that can work long term. Like queen c2 and first the knight going right.
Right.
We got a step knight.
We do have a step knight, and I actually I spoke a little bit about the step knight, but then you unstepped it. So
So queen e2, very reasonable. I, hindsight, should have just gone with the probably more instructive and, well, simply only or better move, d5, which is what I was kind of talking about, how it's sort of a race to play d5. My d5 hits your bishop, also guards my knight, and I can castle next. So I'm pretty okay with that. And instead I went with castling first. And I'm wondering what went through your head in this moment, because obviously you ended up, well, I think you spent some time here, and then you ended up castling.
yeah, well, I mean, I was like, oh, free knight. Just kidding, rook e8. And then like, I mean, you can like, I guess try to block it with like knight e5, but then you can Oh wait, then you do knight e5, and I can pawn takes, and then yeah, rook takes pawn on e5. Oh wait, and then your rook's hanging. What the hell?
Yep. Everything you
Oh
just
man.
calculated is very sound. That's a good line.
Yeah. Whoops.
Except it's a good line for you.
Yeah, I know. I gave you too much credit, dude.
He did see knight e5 Attenborough. Slightly unfortunately for Neil, he saw it in analysis instead of in the game. Would have
Well,
hit a little harder
yeah,
in the game.
I think I saw it, but I like pulled a Valentinian and was like, well, all right, that line don't work. Except it was like reverse because like it didn't work for you. But,
Right, exactly.
yeah, whoops.
So here, and the main thing is that I can't pick up your knight in any fun way because I have to deal with this. That's kind of the thing. Is
Yeah,
that
okay.
maybe d6 would be kind of a normal way to take this back. It might still be okay. Even still, I think something like this is still fine for white. But that if that happened, maybe black has a justification. But it's more that this guy's also hanging. So even though you're bringing your knight there as like a defensive thing, you do have an offensive idea.
Yep, yeah.
And
So,
that's kind of important because if you don't notice this, then you might be like, oh, I'm just gonna lose my knight. No
right.
point. Um, and then of course after queen takes here, there's no more d5 because it's covered by you.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's opportunity one blown.
I hope there weren't more, but this was definitely the opportunity.
Yep.
Black should play d5 and defend, attack, sort of do everything that I was talking about wanting to do, open up the pieces. But instead, the quick castle, and I think your queen e2 actually pays off here because you can take and stick the knight in front.
Yep.
And basically, what we end up reaching is the position that we probably would have reached anyway. So if I played d5, you played bishop d3, I castled, you might have castled, and then, hey, we'd be right here anyway. But
Yep.
the way that we got there was certainly not ideal from my perspective. I chose bishop g4. Hey, I like knight d2. Even though maybe we don't want to trade, you need to kind of open up your pieces, and you obviously don't want me to take you.
Yeah, and your knight is like so good there.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to remove it.
Made a lot of sense. And here I just took, I mean, h3 is a good move. I just took the opportunity to get rid of your two bishop advantage, I'll call it. I always say whenever you or your opponent, like let's say your opponent has two bishops, your goal should be to use your one bishop and trade it off for the identical color. It's always going to be one of the best plans in the position if you can achieve it. Right, and then we get this trade, and I mean seriously, you're really not playing that badly. You're just down one pawn, and I've gotten rid of your bishop pair, so it's a very small advantage. And from here, I just basically like kind of habits a little like h6, a6, and like offering trades whenever possible. And then I decided to weasel this knight in, and really your only big mistake was like putting your bishop sort of on this side of the board instead of probably on that square, which is just far superior. So
Gotcha.
you can't go there right away, but if you kind of slowly go like this, and then eventually try to get here, that'll be controlling the center, hitting my pawn. Whereas what ended up happening was your bishop, although it might look like it's on a nice diagonal, I'm not really planning on using like any of these squares.
Yeah.
Right? All my pieces kind of work around that. And then when I played a5, you eventually realized your bishop was pretty much trapped. Like it doesn't have a lot of squares. So you could still move it, and you definitely could save it, but this is the wrong diagonal for this piece to be on.
Yep.
So take that and throw it like on g3, for example, and hey, you're down a pawn, but you're absolutely still playing this game.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm definitely harping less on the, like after this. I mean, I'm not here to to analyze down a piece. Is no real point in that. So definitely focusing a little bit more on the earlier stuff, especially getting out of the opening. So if we assume that black sort of gets d5 when he should, then that's sort of how the opening should go. But if you castle d5, this bishop's going to move somewhere. Say here, castles, and you have two bishops. Maybe you'll go for c4. Bishop a3, I still think is replaced nicely by bishop, to this side of the board. You have two bishops, you're down a pawn, but that's just sort of the game you invite when you play knight c3.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So it just depends. Like if you if you want to stay more solid, then definitely this one's the way to
So
go.
my thought was like, I'm playing a grandmaster. I'm definitely not gonna try to out solid a GM. So let's play a little more aggro.
And you had your moment.
Yeah,
You did.
I had my chance, but we didn't go for it.
Because the opposite, not the opposite, but rather a different way to play was what you went for in the other game, just d6, and then after this move, unfortunately, you're sort of in that middle ground of, hey, we didn't play knight f6, which would be more natural to take and maybe check. Now, if you take and check, basically d6 is just worse than knight f6.
Right.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, buddy.
Looking real limber there.
Yeah, yeah.
Shorts and
It's well,
got
this
a
is the
workout
one
chief.
place to wear it because it's so hot in the house.
Oh yeah, it's brutal.
Definitely,
Hot and sweaty in here.
definitely gotta
In
bring out the
the
short shorts.
chess dungeon with Neil.
Cheers to Neil.
Yep.
Cheers, Eric.
So yeah, I mean, just you when you play d6, you are planning to not take me. I can tell because you're playing to support the center. But
Yeah.
unfortunately here, there's tactically, I guess I could say, it just doesn't work. Because you're gonna lose one of these pawns by force.
And I quickly realized that.
And the worst part about losing a center pawn is that if it comes in conjunction with trading queens as well, then it's just depressing. You know what I mean? Like you're just like, oh my goodness, like I gotta trade queens as well. Now I got like no counterplay.
Mm-hmm.
So
And then we get to get grinded down by GM Hambo.
yeah,
What fun that's gonna be.
this is so I'm spending a little less time on this and sort of in the first time that we looked at the position, I was mentioning things for both sides because from here, what happened was not something that you can learn a lot from. Let's be honest.
Yep.
I mean, there's definitely stuff to learn from, but it's not the stuff that you're gonna need when you're at your rating. It's not like
Right.
you know, hey Neil, you gotta grind, you gotta focus on this position, you know, really study this one, and you're gonna jump 200 points. Not like that. More so, you want to focus on earlier here when you're making this decision to support, understanding that this c3 d4 plan by white pretty much warrants you to capture it nearly every time you see it. It's sort of like a Sicilian, if you think of the Sicilian, and it's like, you know, you might see somebody go e4, c5, knight f3, black goes somewhere, white goes d4. How many times have you ever seen a Sicilian where the move d4 happens and black doesn't immediately take that pawn like straight away? It's just like, that's the move.
Yep.
No matter what Sicilian you play, like there's a few sidelines where you don't take it, but few and far between. You always take that pawn, so it's just sort of like a habit that you get into. And same thing when you see c3, d4, especially this early in the Italian. It's just one that you kind of are going to have to take with the black pieces. There's not many tricky lines or things you can play where you can get away with keeping that pawn in the center. So I think above and beyond this line with capturing and giving the check is the one to go for black.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and hopefully you can play it a little better than me. Secure your knight before you secure your king.
Yeah.
There we go. Well, the second position is going to be, let's just say it's more like a blank canvas position. So a lot of freedom for you, no matter which side you are, to invent. There's definitely less theoretical guidelines in the next position we're going to play.
I like inventing.
Yeah. So we'll see Neil, blank canvas, you know, easel ready to paint in the next position. So I will once again mute myself, sir, and leave you with the chat.
Sounds good.
All right. Good luck.
Yeah, thanks, you too. You're gonna need it.
Oh yeah.
Hey.
Jeez, he got me with the zinger right before I put the headphones
I was
down.
hoping you couldn't hear that one.
So, you guys are gonna recognize this. It's not a special position. Hey, this is the Scandinavian. Black is just taken back, and we get to jump straight into a pretty well-known opening in chess, but one that when you look at it, it's pretty much, you know, very close to the starting position. The things that you'd be able to do are infinite. Okay, knight f6. I'm going to go attack this queen now, see where he wants to put it. Okay, queen over to a5 makes a ton of sense. I'm going to go ahead and develop my bishop early on. I like to get it out to this diagonal. And we'll see what setup he wants to go for. For me, kicking the queen out makes sense. After bishop there, most likely going to play knight f3, but there is still a world where I go knight to e2. Okay, bishop to g4. Now, queen under attack. We obviously have the option to move the queen. We also have the option to play these knight moves that I was talking about. And I think I am going to take the opportunity to play knight e2 instead of knight f3. Knight f3 definitely works as a move. Nothing wrong with it. But after h3, bishop h5, I don't have a way to break the pin apart from g4. So I'm going to choose this so I can maybe play f3. Okay, as always, just going to ask him what he's doing with h3, see what he's up to. So he's getting fancy here. It might be a little too fancy. I'm under the impression that after f3, I am potentially winning material. Bishop goes back, g4, queen h4. He is surviving. But I think f3 is a good move because we play bishop e3 next. And then he's faced with all sorts of threats. Okay. Well, I think if he's giving up the piece, it was definitely too fancy. So rook's under attack. I think in this position, I'm not going to try to keep defending this pawn here. I'm just going to gain time attacking the queen, give up another pawn, and look to castle this way. Okay, so this check is a little bit annoying. I'm going to put my bishop here so that if I get checked on h4, I can drop the bishop back. Okay, I actually like his move for him. Even though it offers a trade here, he does threaten to give me this check afterwards, which is not the most comfortable. Not the most comfortable. So something like queen d3 to maybe slide the queen over to g3 seems to make the most sense. It's probably what I'm going to go for in this position. Just want as many trades as possible. Okay, he's not trading queens. Understandable. But now I get to castle, and I absolutely will take that chance. Okay, time to make that number one move that everyone should make after long castling. King b1. Okay, now we're going to shift pretty much all our pieces over to the king side. Okay, here comes the other rook. Now he is actually the one that wants to trade, and I'm the one that's going to decline. Okay, this is a pawn to win. I'm going to start by going bishop here, though. Let's take this. We might have a sacrifice brewing here. Let's go for it. Tough, tough. The sacrifices are pretty lethal there. Remember, I was already up a piece, so when I'm sacrificing, I'm not even behind here. Like, he's basically just getting mated, and the material is even. So that is definitely very comfortable for white to attack when you don't even feel like you're behind. Feel like you had a piece to sacrifice, basically. So let's just go right into the next game, which is basically going to be the exact same position, just flipped around. You guys know the drill, and then we'll analyze these after. So I have a bunch of options here, all very good. I'm gonna go ahead and play one of my favorite ones, which is Queen E5 check. Okay, and you get to now experience the Scandinavian in its purest form. Basically, if the queens aren't on the board in the Scandinavian, I already think that black is at least completely fine, if not more. But usually, when your queen is sort of like in Neil's case, when he had his queen running around all over the board, like it ended up causing him trouble. Here, I think black is totally happy. Number one move to play in the Scandinavian is going to be right here. C6. Play this move pretty much every time. Okay, we're going to get developed. Always, before playing this move, don't block yourself in. Okay, move our bishop back, maintain that threat. Make sure we don't lose our bishop here. And if you play the Scandinavian, you should be very familiar with the type of moves that are going to be coming next for black, because they're almost the same in every Scandi position. This knight goes here, this knight goes here, this pawn goes here, and this bishop goes to one of those two squares nearly every time. So, hey, that's what I'm going to be doing. Okay, bishop f4. Again, not playing any moves out of the ordinary here. Also coming with a threat. So the nice thing about my position is that he put his knight on a square that I don't think he's used to his knight being on. Like a knight on d4 in front of your pawn is very, very weird. Like it's not something that normally happens. So he's blundered a piece here with e5, but you see this pawn on c6. It's killing this diagonal in case this bishop ever gets there. It's stopping knight d5, stopping knight d5. It's like one of the most important things to get in the Caro-Kann, in the Scandi. Now this pawn is a killer. But right here, he's blundered a piece, so we're going to go ahead and fork him here. Okay. Well, an easy choice for me. Let's take that free piece. Bishop takes back, and now bishop c5, going for further trades. Seems to be in line with my advice. As soon as you're up something significant, like full pawn or full piece, that's what you want to do. Go for trades. Okay, I actually like this this move from Neil. It's a weird way to develop the rook, but I like it. I'm gonna long castle, so my rook ends up in the center. My other rook's gonna join. Knight attacked. I think either of these moves is pretty acceptable, but in general, a move that controls the center is going to be preferred compared to like knight a6. So no matter which move you choose here, would probably be a good one. I'm going to go with knight e6. Okay, let's get the rook to the middle here. Now we've pretty much got all our pieces mobilized, and we can maybe jump this knight in and look to, surprise, surprise, get more trades. I'm a pretty predictable guy when I'm up a piece. Okay, again, if I'm going to attack the piece, I'm obviously going to take it. And let's think, his last move was this. You might want to go a6 to undermine this pawn here. I'm going to let it happen and grab this freebie over there. Okay, if he takes, I'm just going to take it back. Let's bring this knight back to civilization. Okay, he's making a threat here. Let's stop that. He's making a threat here. Annoying. Let's stop that. He's not stopping. Okay, let's put our bishop on a bit of a nicer square there. Start to push this this pass pawn. Oh, a trade. Yo, you don't have to ask me twice, dude. You don't have to ask me twice. And now that is a pin as well. But that was the nicest move he could have played there. It really was. That's good though. He's not continuing to trade pieces. Let's give a check here. Offer another trade? He's gonna say no. He's gonna say no. He knows better. Let's push that pawn. Rook's behind the pawns. That's the strat. All right. Well, let's put both of them behind there just to secure that. Let's get our king into the middle. Important endgame stuff. Okay. So protect this. If he checks me, I do want to get a little bit closer. So that's a good move by him. I like that. I'm going to go here, though. I got two threats. I'm pushing a pawn all the way, and I'm being very annoying with my king. Okay. We got more passed pawns. We got to do more pushing. We got to do more pushing. This bishop active. Ooh. I like what he's going for here. Okay, I'm going to play a little defense. Neil's been very active with his rook, on the 4th rank. It's been pretty impressive. It's been pretty impressive. I think he's going to play this. Yeah. Well, he's been active on the 4th rank, but I've been active on the 5th rank. Gotcha. Gotcha. GG. That was a good struggle by Neil, even down a piece. I played that really well. Hello, Neil.
Hello, sir.
So if you see that blank slate position at the beginning, what's your instinct? Would you rather play that as white or as black? What kind of player are you?
White.
No question, eh?
Yeah, except it appears that it didn't go quite so well. No question, white. I hate that for black.
When your queen is like just kind of out getting attacked all the time, and there's no there's no end in sight. There's no secure position for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because different play, like your buddy Salty might prefer to have his queen loosey goosey out there.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't mind having the queen out there. It's just I don't know. I just feel like it's usually easier to play as white.
Yep. Yeah, you have a lot of free
yourself
moves.
As black. Yeah.
For sure. For sure. I'm gonna throw on the screen again. And grab a couple positions for us. So this was me with the white pieces. I think the sort of d4 knight c3 order isn't too relevant. I just chose to go with d4.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if it it might throw you off or confuse you, but
It confused me a little bit.
I think it's pretty much going to transpose to the exact same thing.
Yeah.
But when you play this move, there is the idea that maybe c4 could happen. That's the only other thing, is that I think you have to at least be ready for c4 and then like d5. So that's the one difference. But the way that it happened, I don't think it would have changed much. Like if I started with this and then played d4, knight f6, I think we'd be in the same position no matter what. So you went queen a5. I think this is like the classical, like, man, back when I was reading books, when I was, starting out in chess with the Scandinavian, it's like this was the only line in the book. Queen went to a5. That's it. Nowadays you got like queen d6, queen d8. It's like the concept of taking a pawn and going all the way back to d8 is just like blasphemous. Like, how is that even an opening? Just wasting 2 moves. But hey, they make it work, man. Modern theory.
You really do. There are some tricksters out there.
But I mean, this is classic stuff. So queen a5, I like that you went for the what I would consider is the main line, although I think that's probably changing slightly. Is we got some fancy tricksters, as you said, going for stuff like queen d6. But I like the classic main line with queen a5. You get your bishop out. You know that you want to do this basically before you ever touch that pawn.
Yep.
So doing this with tempo, I decided to go knight e2. I think f3 would also be an idea. I was just curious, where would you have gone after f3 if you were
So I'm an f3 brah, so I play this as white.
Okay.
So I think people always play bishop h5, which like seems bad. Wait, or and I know, I think I would have went bishop f5.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I think basically people are going bishop h5. Essentially, once black gets the bishop out, they don't really care where it lands as long as it's safe, and then they just want to play e6.
Yeah.
So you play. Okay, so you were familiar maybe with the setup that I was going
f3
for.
brah, yep.
Gotcha. So if you're an f3 brah, then that should immediately make me question how you could possibly play this move when f3 basically, right? Because in a few moves, you played queen h5, and if you're an f3 guy, then you know just how forcing this move is. Like, you're kind of forced into submission.
I agree, but when you're playing somebody who's slightly stronger than you, you got to try and throw them off.
Hey, queen h5. As soon as you played it, I was like, that's a fancy move, and it might be too fancy.
Also, like, since you pushed h3, it was even more enticing because I'm like, oh, I can probably pick up all 3 of these pawns, not just 2 of them.
Right.
So.
And you did. I didn't see a good way to keep all the pawns, and I didn't see I didn't see a reason to try. But after h3, I guess obviously I was expecting either bishop back or maybe even bishop takes. The other thing I was expecting was that you would want to play c6 and knight d7 and like tuck your queen back.
Yep.
Whereas queen h5 is definitely... Queen h5, by the way, is definitely a move that 100% sees some action, some daylight in the Scandi, but the knight is on f3 when that happens.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then the reason is there's no f3, so, number one... number one reason, so no f3. And then the other thing, obviously, is that you're threatening then to play bishop takes f3, which would double my pawns eventually.
Yeah.
So queen h5 is not, like, it's not insane that you came up with this, but you probably, if you have seen any patterns or any positions where queen h5 has been there, I bet that the knight was on f3 in most of them.
That makes sense, yeah.
So it wasn't totally crazy, but in this position, f3 is just a really, really strong reply to it.
Yep.
And then, as you said, picked up as, you take what you can get, right?
Of course, always.
And I was saying when you played this move, I was actually, I thought it was a good one, even though it's a trade. This guy is just so strong on that diagonal. So I was a fan of this. And here it's like really kind of a 50-50. You don't want to trade queens, but as soon as you castle, eventually I'm the one who's going to say no to a queen trade, which is kind of how the game went.
I don't know why I castled short here. Like, that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, there's only 4 open files.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's like, after I did it, I was like, well, that was awful.
Yeah, fair play. It's not the most comfortable to play a regular position when you're just missing a piece. Like
Yeah.
it's hard to adjust because all the normal principles, suddenly you almost have to think of the opposite, and that can be really annoying. Like, of course, long or short castle is like the absolute number one place you put your king in every Scandinavian, but
Yep.
you've entered a very very low percentage playtime Scandinavian. Like the amount of times this has been on the board, and that you've maybe studied it, not a lot at all. And you're gonna have to adjust for that, and that's very hard to do. Very hard to do. So I wouldn't beat yourself up about it because you're sort of sticking to a more habitual approach. And what position are you going to be in? 90% plus of the time, you're going to be in a position where white, hey, has 3 pawns here, and this is going to make sense. So I don't think you should beat yourself up about that decision. Yeah, and here again, it's like we've reached a point where, hey, this is a good move, but at this point, I'm thinking, okay, I got way too much firepower here to be trading now.
I'm thinking Arby's. Yep.
I was just reflecting. I thought, Salty Clown is never going to subscribe anymore if I trade queens there. The opportunity cost was too high.
Of course.
Yeah. Yeah, and just as I was mentioning, it's just too much firepower. Like it's all aimed at one spot, so surprise,
Yeah,
surprise.
like, let's move it to the other side. What could go wrong?
Yeah, there's not much to extra to say about that one. This was more the opening, getting a little too fancy with the queen, and that queen move when the knight on f3 is absolutely one to consider. But otherwise, probably wouldn't even have it on the tip of your tongue.
Duly noted.
Yeah. So let me bring up the last one, which was our more recent one, and I was mentioning while we were playing it, I was really really impressed by your piece down play. Now, hopefully, that's not because you've got a lot of practice there, but
Dare I say it might be because I have a lot of practice there.
I was impressed. Like that was a long struggle, and obviously, if we look at the rating that I have compared to the rating you have, we might say, oh, but it was always trending in my favor. The result was never in doubt. But I mean, if you're that resilient against someone lower rated, I mean, they're gonna mess up like a lot before
They
that
do.
conclusion.
They do, man.
So that was good. So let's flip this. So you went for knight c3, and I decided to go queen e5 check, and
I hated myself for playing queen e2 because I'm like, there's no way I'm ever gonna KO him on without a queen. So like, why am I getting rid of the queens now? But
that's what I thought. I was like, there's no way he plays queen e2. Queen
yeah,
e2.
dude, I hated myself as soon as I played.
So queen e2, definitely a fine move, not a good move. I think
No.
the other, even I don't recommend this, but even this might just be practically better than the queen because
I agree.
my queen in the center of the board cannot avoid at least taking a couple hits, like from some things in the future. So bishop e2 seems to make the most sense because you know where your knight's going next.
It sure does.
Right? So I was definitely expecting that one, and I was definitely up for some other Scandies, but the reason I decided to play this one was because I wanted to see this move, and then I was going to, let's say, play c6 and bring my queen back and basically get one of these regular Scandi positions. And it's one of these safe ones where instead of having your queen out here, dancing around, you just tuck it back and you get your bishop out and establish these. I don't even know what to call them, but this pawn structure, e6, f7, c6, b7. This is like the classic Caro-Kann, classic Scandinavian. It's like it's the most solid structure in chess against this d4.
It's so beta looking, but it's good.
I know, it's so solid, it's so annoying.
Yeah.
So that's what I was going for ultimately, and I mean c6 I think is just like an absolute star move in the Scandi, let's say, or I've mentioned the Caro-Kann. Caro-Kann, obviously you start with this move, but what you often end up with is a pawn that's missing from the d file, so it looks the same. But this move is just so killer; it stops white's knight from ever using these squares, and yeah, I mean you were gonna go for this move as well in your game if the game had proceeded a little bit differently. I assume you would have gone there and brought your queen back.
Yes.
So again, I'm just getting my bishop out before going e6. I like where you're going with this. The only thing I thought might throw you off, even though you wouldn't notice it yet, is this. Like, it's just in front of your pawn. It's not a very
I noticed
typical
it.
thing.
I sure noticed it.
You felt it eventually. So I just figured that would throw you off. So I'm never a big fan of these moves because it's sort of a multi-purpose move, but you know that you're not playing this game without moving that piece again.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like that your pawn's gonna need to go there, or I'm gonna attack it with a rook, or unfortunately what you didn't realize is that you can't use even other natural squares that you want to use because of this guy and maybe a fork.
Well, if it's of any if it matters, as soon as I played that, like right before you played e5, I recognized that e5 was there, and you made it even more painful because you took your time to play it. Probably explaining to the chat how this guy's dumb.
That's exactly what I was doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. I was like,
Like, and
Neil
I'm
is
like,
so
yep, oh man,
stupid.
e5, he has e5 here. And I'm like, okay, well, twiddle my thumbs, wait for Hambo to send it.
Yeah, wait for him to get that laser pointer down from the chalkboard as he's teaching everyone why we don't
Get
leave
all
our
the nerd emotes
pieces.
out there. Yeah.
So, unfortunately, I did have to slow roll you there on that one. I had the nuts. E5 was happening, and it's just a byproduct of a few things. Like, first of all, Queen E2, whereas Bishop E2, Knight F3, D4 gets you the position that you probably want from this Scandi opening as white, a little bit quicker. Whereas Queen E2 throws you off a little bit because I played Bishop F5 quickly, and suddenly it's like, wait a minute, I can't really play D4. My pawn's hanging, and then you end up playing D3, and it's all the more passive.
Yeah.
And normally I wouldn't really go much into this, but like I said, I thought you were quite resilient after this point. I like this. Like I said it when you played it, but I was a big fan of this rook thing. Hey, if you're down a piece, you may as well come up with the most creative stuff you possibly can.
Yeah. I'm like, well, my pieces suck, so let's try and make one of them not suck.
Big fan of A 4, 5, 6. This is great way to undermine. I would probably say that the safer move for me is probably to king up or a6 just to not even allow it. But the greed got the better of me, and I think I ended up giving you way too much counterplay.
Yep.
So the only move I really didn't like was this one because it allowed
I agree.
massive trades. It's
Yeah.
huge for me.
Yeah, I think.
So like, let's say you took maybe king takes back, and then there's maybe like a check to throw in, and if I'm going this way, I'm losing this pawn. If I'm going this way, I thought maybe you have a few moves to make some threats, right? Maybe knight here.
Yep.
Some knight b6 stuff. So
Fancy.
yeah, I thought you're actually doing the best you possibly could for being down a knight, or down a bishop rather, and then knight e4 was just like, oh, thank goodness.
Yeah, I did.
Thank goodness.
That was also one of those, like, as soon as I let go of it, I was like, well, wow, that was a bad move.
Right, because you're thinking like, oh, I'm correcting my pawns.
Yeah, no.
There are some good elements to it, but when you're this close to my king with all your other pieces, then yeah, I'd rather have the knight join the attack somehow.
Right.
So yeah, after that, even though this struggle continued for a little bit longer, which remains impressive, at this point, this was the feeling of like, okay, the result is never in doubt. I just like have to push these pawns slowly. But when you had the knight on the board and the pawn up here, it was more like the result's in doubt, and I still have to play accurately.
Ooh, okay. All right. We made him sweat a little bit.
Oh yeah, no, that was
allegedly.
I was perspiring for sure. Yeah, and then it's a bit normal that a tactic might end a game like this. Hey, I've got an extra piece, so the tactics deserve to work for the guy who's up in material. That's what I always say.
I don't know about that, but all right. Agreed.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I could tell that you were definitely not as comfortable when you played black in this one. And then the unfortunate thing was that you played queen e2 and you just didn't get a position that I feel like you are interested in at all with the white pieces.
I agree.
Because with
That
white,
is
it's more your style to, bishop b2 there, gain some more time on my queen, and then, you're going to have a reasonable position coming out of that opening 10 times out of 10.
yeah. I don't know. You got me all hot and bothered, Hambo.
That is the old stage fright. But this was the second position. So yeah, these were the two that I wanted to do today. Didn't end up taking too much time, so I appreciate you joining. I know you had a bunch of thoughts that I personally haven't heard yet, so I'm sure I'll go through the
Oh yes,
the
yes.
footage at some point and hear the beautiful thought process inside the mind of Neil.
Of course, yes. Thank you so much for having me on.